Imagine that the Prime Minister, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, were to put you in charge of national integration in Malaysia Baru. How would you start? Or do you think that integration is a myth? Let me show you something. Tell me, is the jar full? Is the jar full now? How about now? Is the jar full? Finally, the jar is full. Now try to imagine that this jar represents Malaysia Baru. The golf balls are the important things. For the individual, these are family, friends, your children, their education, the community, religion, health, love, water, and food. On a national level, the important things could be public bodies like the civil service, judiciary, police, and armed forces. The pebbles represent the other important things in our life that matter, but not as much, like our job, house, car, money, or hobbies. Now the sand represents the small stuff, the trivia that may make life much nicer. Things like designer handbags, designer watches, jewellery, foreign holidays, the imported sports car, grand mansions, or the latest smartphone. But if you fill the jar up in the reverse order and put the sand in the jar first, the trivial things like the designer accessories and the material goods, you won't have much space left for the golf balls or the pebbles, the things that are important. You can try this at home and see for yourself. And the same is true of life in Malaysia Baru. Set our priorities right. Take care of the golf balls first, the things that are important. Because if only the golf balls remain, our lives would still be meaningful. We would be happy. Now we have the ability to accomplish anything, but only if we use our resources wisely. Our Malaysian jar of life is full, and even the Teh Tarik has a purpose. And what is the purpose of the Teh Tarik? It's very simple. One can always find time to have a Teh Tarik with a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the honor of addressing this event, and a special thanks to the organizers and in particular KJ John for inviting me. I'm here because of one man, Dr. Tan Chee Khoon. Some of you may have been his friend. Many of you will have heard of him. Others, especially the younger ones, probably have not. Do read his autobiography about a man who envisioned a truly multicultural Malaysia. Although we have never met, and I do not claim to be a giant like Dr. Tan, we share many values. We both love to read, we collect books, and we firmly believe that politicians should be kept on their toes. Dr. Tan wrote for The Star under his byline, "Without fear or favor." I tried to write for the mainstream papers, but was rejected. Perhaps they thought I created fake news. For critics like us, silence is a luxury we can ill afford. The country cannot sustain another 61 years of suffering, nor can we be certain that there will be another man as formidable as Dr. Mahathir to save us. There is no doubt that education was an important feature in Dr. Tan's life. Unlike him, I went to a mission school, as did my mother, her two sisters, and most of my cousins. I was a day girl, but my mother boarded at the Light Street Convent in Penang. In those days, school life was a reflection of the multicultural Malaysia which we inherited from the Tunku. We were happy to eat, play, and work with girls of other races, faiths, and cultures. We visited one another's homes, especially during the festivals, Hari Raya, Christmas, Deepavali, Gawai, or Chinese New Year. We enjoyed the best interfaith and intercultural integration. Mission schools and universities were highly regarded. School was not just for acquiring knowledge. It was also a place where we learned how to face challenges, build on our strengths, overcome our weaknesses, accept responsibility, and by virtue of mixing with others, we learned about social cohesion and tolerance. Today, education has been dumbed down in the name of bangsa, agama, and negara, race, religion, and nation, at the expense of integration and integrity. But all is not lost, because we can reverse the damage that has been done. Perhaps we could use the 10 basic rules which guided Dr. Tan in his approach to life, which I hope will also inspire you. First rule. Dr. Tan did things out of love and not for money. He was passionate about education because education had lifted him out of poverty. He funded various awards and scholarships for top performing students in schools and university. He also encouraged others to help the poor. When you do something with passion, the money will follow. Dr. Tan's love of the community impressed the then Selangor Menteri Besar, Harun Idris, so much that he gave Dr. Tan a piece of land on which to build the Sentosa Medical Center. The two men were from opposite sides of the political divide. Now, in 21st century Malaysia, many politicians would sell plots of state land for a tidy profit and personal gain. Rule number 2. For decades, leaders broke the law, but we kept quiet. We suffered from PNS, Prioritise syndrome. The symptoms are fear of losing our jobs, fear of losing a contract, and fear of losing our place in society. We also developed a bad habit of only listening to people who were somebody in society, like the Datuks, the Tengkus, or doctors and lawyers. Voices of the ordinary person, like the housewife, the labourer, or the homeless, were ignored. Remember, your voice is important. And if you want leaders and civil servants with integrity, you must do your bit. Ask questions. Demand high performance. Dr. Tan did not suffer from PNS. By speaking out, he was called the conscience of the nation and also Mr. Opposition. If there had been more Dr. Tans around, 3 generations of suffering under unjust policies would have been avoided. Rule number 3. To serve his community more efficiently, Dr. Tan added Tamil and Punjabi to his repertoire of languages, which also included Latin. Despite his support for Malay, Dr. Tan warned that nationalists might derail the speaking of English in Malaysia. His predictions came true because today some people think that speaking English is unpatriotic. As a family, we speak both Malay and English at home. But in his first week at a government boarding school, my nephew was beaten up for speaking English. One of his aggressors was his teacher. Today, languages have become politicized as a tool to control us instead of being used to open our minds to the world. Rule number 4. When one has faith, everything is possible. But when one is insecure, one will bully others. In nearby Taman Medan, a church was forced to remove its cross because some villagers claimed that the youth in the area might be proselytized. This had nothing to do with fear. This was intimidation. Some of you who went to mission schools may recall our morning assembly. The nuns and brothers wore crucifixes. Crosses looked down at us from the walls while the congregation said the Lord's Prayer. Some non-Christians may still remember the Lord's Prayer to this day. Did we become Christian after our 12 years of schooling? No, of course not. But I think we became better Muslims, or better Hindus, or better Buddhists in spite of the crucifixes and the Christian prayers. There was no television in Dr. Tan's childhood. His mother entertained her children with stories from the parables. Faith was Dr. Tan's guiding light. Rule number 5. In the convent, it was common for us to share food during break, but today some teachers scold Malay children for sharing their food with their non-Malay friends. In my youth, the school canteen remained open during Ramadan, but today non-Muslim children are forced into changing rooms to eat. In some rural schools in Peninsular Malaysia and Sabah, non-Muslim children are allegedly forced to fast during the fasting month. Today, some Muslims refuse to eat or even visit the homes of their non-Muslim friends, despite their friends making a special effort to provide halal food. Eating together is not just about sharing food. It is an opportunity for people to come together, chat, and forge friendships. Now, when I visit Thailand, I observe many Malaysian men frequenting the flesh pots. The irony was that afterwards, for supper, they were desperate to find the nearest halal restaurant. Rule number 6. A few years ago, I asked some secondary school Muslim girls what they learned in sex education classes, and they said that the teacher advised them to learn to cook several rice dishes. dishes like biryani, nasi tomato, nasi minyak, paella. I can understand that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, but the girls learnt nothing about birth control or sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, or even about saying no. Anyway, how would Dr. Tan react to these leaked exam questions? The first question suggests that Malay children in government secondary schools are taught how to beat their wives. The second question suggests that only Islam condemns corruption. These questions will not encourage national integration or unity. Is it any wonder then that many Malay parents send their children to Chinese schools where the discipline is also much better, or if they can afford it, they would like to send their children to international schools? Rule number 7. Dr. Tan's life was to serve the public, and the Sentosa Medical Center enabled him to serve more people. He spoke out on the people's behalf and was both feared and respected by his fellow MPs. He declined several invitations to join the then government. Fast forward to today, and party jumping appears to be the norm. If you recall, when Tunku took over the UMNO leadership from On Jaafar, the party had no money, and so Tunku sold his house in Penang to fund the running of UMNO. Today, some leaders steal the taxpayers' money to fund their extravagant lifestyle of foreign homes, pink diamonds, and designer handbags. They even steal money meant for the milk for the poor school children. The corrupt leader's definition of integrity is, do as I tell you, but don't do as I do. And when things go wrong, lie and deny. Rule number 8. When some of us claim to be superior to others, a culture of mistrust is cultivated, and blaming others becomes a national pastime. If the economy was terrible, the DAP, the Christians, or even the Jews were blamed. When business was bad, the Chinese or the communists were blamed. Recently, a former Home Minister said that the earthquakes and volcanic eruptions in Indonesia were a punishment from God because some citizens had indulged in lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transsexual activities. If it is not blaming others, it is failing to take responsibility. When 21 children and 2 adults died in a Tahfiz school fire, religious heads assured parents that the victims had gone to heaven. This was a tactic to divert our attention. The school had failed to enforce fire safety regulations, and the perennial drug use among the people who started the fire was conveniently sidestepped. If you recall, 5 out of 7 of the young adults who were charged tested positive for drugs. The authorities had failed in their duty of care towards the victims. When teenagers race their bicycles in the early hours of the morning and are killed in an accident, we should not blame the police. What about parental responsibility and discipline? Rule number 9. Not everything about technology is brilliant. Most teenagers waste countless hours on their smartphones doing very little of substance. Contrast this with the teenage Dr. Tan who would have spent his weekends helping his parents tap rubber, tending the livestock and the vegetable garden. During the week, he crammed in Boy Scout and debating activities after school. He was a voracious reader and read, on average, 4 books a week, when many Malaysians today can barely finish 4 chapters in a year. Despite his busy schedule at his clinic, he spent at least 2 days a week with his constituents. He achieved all this despite being blind in one eye from an accident at 13. Nowadays, the ones who are spoon-fed and given extra privileges have become lazy and demotivated. Superiority has robbed them of any self-respect. Not everyone is as disciplined as Dr. Tan, and I agree that some children need to be pushed to work hard. That is why they invented mothers. I had a tiger mother and tiger grandmother. No one messed them about. When one of my articles upset the former IGP, the police were sent to the house to speak to me. But when they heard who my mother was, they left quickly. I think mother might have been their teacher. Rule number 10. Malaysia is blessed with natural resources and is rich in human capital, but we are short of one commodity, and that is leadership, or rather, leadership without ego. Leadership is a gift. You either have it or you don't. You can't buy it, although one former Prime Minister tried. Reject leaders whose egos have to be continually massaged because they have a strong sense of entitlement. Reject people who demand respect, like the state assemblymen who yelled, "Do you know who I am? I am the YB here, not you." Reject leaders who say, "I can do my job better if I became a Datuk Sri." A leader with integrity will practice what he preaches. He will speak the same language when he is overseas and in front of a local audience. He has the same message for both the non-Malays and the Malays. He will not tell the Rakyat to do one thing whilst he does another. Remember too that our leaders, including the Prime Minister, should be drawn from the most capable Malaysians. And the operative word is Malaysians. So, why should integrity matter? Integrity is essential to a country's success and development. It protects the country from corruption. It is the foundation of good governance. The lack of integrity affects the lives of Malaysians in many ways, from awards to approved permits, from films to fast food outlets, from housing to hotels, from JAKIM to the judiciary, from schools to sports, supermarkets and Sharia courts, from the police to the prison service and political parties. Today, when you visit a government department, the staff focus on your clothing and not on providing an efficient service. Without integrity, many of our best talent and brains who only want equal opportunities and justice will continue to be forced overseas. The late Yasmin Ahmad was a film director whose productions bridged the racial divide. We need more of this type of film. Don't erase our shared history because this country has its foundations in the blood, sweat and tears of all the races. Stop having quotas for race in sports, at school. Only a transparent and accountable government will help foster national integration. But then, how committed are you to national integration? Integration with integrity is not a myth. It can happen if all the obstacles that divide us are removed and we start to respect one another's cultures and faith. If you want national integration, this is what you must do. Number 1, get rid of the bangsa and agama in our identity cards. Number 2, ban racism and affirmative action policies. Number 3, reduce the wealth gap between the haves and have-nots. Number 4, do not politicize languages. Number 5, treat East and West Malaysians equally. And number 6, allow media freedom and freedom of expression. National integration is like a marriage or a relationship. It needs hard work, a good sense of humor, and mutual respect to be harmonious. A high-maintenance wife will destroy a happy union. A jealous husband will stifle the marriage. A domineering mother-in-law will wreck everyone's lives. Favoritism will only create disharmony. Communication is vital, and you must talk about sensitive subjects. Integrity begins at home. The events of 9th May provided the catalyst for a new beginning. Next, we should muster the courage to move forwards. We start now. We may not see the fruits of our work, but our children and grandchildren will. They say that charity begins at home, but so does integrity and truthfulness. Remember the jar of life? Dr. Tan prioritized the most important things, and so should we. Like him, you can have the strength of character to act with integrity. You can determine the direction of this country. Thank you, and a Happy New Year to you.